We are here in Xenia, Ohio, with our good friend Richard Myers. Richard, how are you today?
Better than I was yesterday. Not as good as I will be in a few days.
Good. Yeah, Richard's had a little bit of health problems from time to time, and he's dealing with that right now. So we are happy to have you with us on the Laid Back Bike Report. And if you wouldn't mind, let's start with a few questions.
Sure.
All right. Richard, where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Xenia. I moved here from Columbus, suburb of Columbus, when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And actually it was Marysville, Ohio is where I was born at. And I've lived here the rest of my life. I've also lived in New York City and Toledo and all through Virginia, thanks to my work, which was a telephone installation on the switchboards there.
Who did you work for?
I worked for, well, they kept changing the names. Western Electric started with, then AT&T and Lucent. I think there's Nokia signs my paychecks now. That's all I'm interested in, is just sign my retirement checks.
If you wouldn't mind, tell us how old you are now.
Well, I'm 85 right now. In the 24th of next month, I'll be 86.
Tell us about your childhood. What was your childhood like?
A lot of hassle in school and a waste of time as far as I was concerned. And
you weren't a particularly good student.
I wasn't a particularly good student there. Being small, a little bit short as I am, I couldn't get the basketball up to the hoop. I couldn't get over the bar when I tried to pole vault. I wasn't very fast running. The only thing I had any speed at was race walking. But the coach just threw it in for one day. I didn't know that years later that would come back and be a big part of my life. But it's a typical kid. I started out on a scooter. I never did have a bike or a tricycle until later. And I used to go with my friends. We would pedal out to the local airport, which is about 5 miles from here, and hop rides. The guys, of course you can't do it today, but we'd go up, hey mister, can I ride with you around the pattern? And off we'd go around the pattern, come back and land there. So I've ridden in little Piper Cups and interesting time. Then we'd get on our bikes and we'd head back. So every time I see young kids out there on the trail, I hearken back to that time when the bicycle was my freedom like it's their freedom.
What got you interested in mechanical things and bicycles? Why did you develop an interest in that?
Well, I spent summers in my farm, at my grandfather's farm. You know, the dogs and I'd run down the creek and everything, and I got to drive the tractor back and forth, pulling the load of hay up in the top of the barn there. It was an interesting way to grow up. I wish every kid could spend some time on the farms in the summertime. Tell you the story. My grandfather was a little fellow like me. My grandmother, they all lived in Columbus. She said, I'm going to marry that man. My grandfather was riding his bicycle. He jumped off his bicycle, pulled out his big pocket watch to see what kind of speed he got there. So if it wasn't for the bicycle, I wouldn't be here. Now, my interest in mechanics have always been there. I was constantly dismantling something. Dad always had stuff in the barn that I'd go in and take apart and try to put back together, which included his good watch that I dismantled with a broken razor blades and then couldn't get it back together. Interest in aerodynamics, I was fascinated by the Bonneville speed trials there and how beautiful and slick those machines looked and how much aerodynamics played into their kind of speed.
Where were you first introduced to recumbent bikes? Where did that all come from?
Well, there was a group of us in Yellow Springs once a month, speed skaters. And we'd take off, go to Xenia, then come back. One day, this guy called Tom Ollinger showed up, and he had a low racer. This is an interesting looking thing there. And I ran over him. Well, what actually happened was parts kept dropping off that darn thing, and I would hit him in the dark there somewhat. They also had the shop where we skated out of was starting to have recumbent bikes, and I'm always interested in the odd things. I never had the Schwinn because I didn't want the daggone Schwinn. And so I ended up buying a bikey, and that Tom and I rode a lot. He rode in his streamliner, and I was on my bikey, and it was fun going down through the trail and coming up some guy passing him, and he'd get all ticked off and try to pass us back, and we just crank the recumbents up a little higher and leave them.
Did you have the bikey? Did you have the front fairing as well?
Yeah, I built a front fairing for it later in my career with it there. That was the first fairing I ever made. That was out of coroplast. First of many that I've made.
Can you take me through your life as a recumbent builder, racer? What were the bikes? What were the races?
As I was waiting for Tom to build the bike that he promised me, which never happened, I started on an older, I think it was a 24-inch bike with a full suspension on it there. And I modified that into a recumbent that I used 26-inch wheels on. And I built a coroplast body around it. I also had it also equipped at one time with contact paper. In fact, one of my memories is going down the trail in Yellow Springs, which is, of course, near the horse barn there. And this horse reared like mad. Well, the reason was that my fairing on my recumbent looked like an animal. It had brown stripes on it, and it had two big reflectors as eyes on it there. Fortunately, the woman was very good, and she was able to control it, and I put the bike in the ditch, and finally we got the horse to sniff me, and then he'd sniff the bike and say, okay. Later on that day, I was going to Cedarville and coming back home, and I saw this woman on the other side of the fence and riding her horse, just proudly trotting along there. And I said, lady, you better watch your horse, because when I go by, he's probably going to rear. And she stuck her nose up in the air. Well, I warned you. And as I passed him, he started doing donuts. He may still be doing donuts, too. That bike went through a lot of different designs. I finally ended up full suspension on it. And I was told by the so-called experts of our group that it would never work the way I had the front suspension design. It worked like a charm. My first race with it was at Major Taylor in Indianapolis, and I'd seen pictures of on the video of the Major Taylor type of velodromes, but never seen one yet. And I walked in there and I said, God, there's no way I'm going to get up there on top of those banks. Shoot. 5 minutes I was up on the very top and screaming down through there. And I was never a top racer. I had a lot of fun racing the things, and I had as much fun building as I did racing the things there.
But you were hooked at that point, yes?
I was hooked. Hobbies seemed to run in about 5 years increments with me. And the bicycling, which I include my scootering, has stuck with me from the time I started back seriously in bikes in 1971 till today.
So then what came next?
Well, I started going down the circuit with everybody else there. And Tom said, you know, there's a mold around here for the Moby. Maybe you could get Gary into making you one. And so I was up working, and I'd worked some with Gary, and I asked Gary, I says, Gary, is there a possibility we can make one for me there? And he says, I got you one better. I've got one sitting behind my barn. Next weekend when you come up, it'll be here.
Can you tell us what the Moby is?
The Moby is a long wheelbase streamliner. It was built to set world's records, but the guy never finished it in time there. There's about 3 or 4 Mobys were ever built there. The streamliners are very, very tight.
Could you describe what a streamliner is for people who don't know?
Streamliner, you take a Korean age fighter plane, take the wheels and the tail and the wings off, and you've got a recumbent. They're actually a little roomier than what my recumbent is. When I'm sitting inside my recumbent, my hips hit the outside edge of it. My elbows have to be padded because they're hitting things. I'm sitting here like this, just peering over the steering wheel there and looking down the front end of it like that. I can't get my fingers on top of my head because there's no room there. I can't turn my head much more than about that. I can see my mirrors, and that's about all I need. The theory is the smaller you can make it, the faster it's going to be. And since I'm a small little guy, I could make that thing very, very tight around me. And I did a lot of modification on that bike to get it to where it would handle. In fact, the one day I brought it out, we met down here in Xenia, and Gary was there. And I showed it to him, and I was riding around, and he said, Richard, I've never seen that bike turn sharp corners like that. They never did. And I said, well, mine does. And streamliners are bulky, they're heavy, about 60 pounds. Some of the high-tech carbon fiber ones are lighter, but they're a lot of fun. They take off a little slow, but the next thing you know, you're over 30 miles an hour going down through the track there. Now, the streamliner, I have one that I do ride on the trail. Moby never goes on it. It's been on the trail once, which was not really a good idea because the dang thing's 9.5 foot long, and I can't see at an intersection. I'd have my nose halfway out there. It's bad enough my road streamliner is about 9 foot, 8.5 foot long, and it's not easy to see out of it, but I can at least see at an intersection. There's a lot of intersections I got to get out and walk across them.
How do you stop on a streamliner?
Well, Moby has originally it had some 2 wheels that dropped down from the top of the big lever to pull them down, and I never liked the way it was, so I took it, modified the frame somewhat, and put in a slide that had a skate wheel on the bottom of it there, an inline skate wheel. And I would lean over on that, and when I go to start, I just a quick jerk on the steering, and it's up on 2 wheels instead of 3. And then I just hit the release button, and the dolly wheel comes back in the side there. And the same, it just reverses when I go to stop. I'll put the dolly wheel down and just gently move my head as much as I can to the sideways just to change the weight balance, and it'll flop over on that wheel. I've never had a wreck. I've wrecked it 2 or 3 times, but I've never had a wreck starting with that system there. The other streamliner, I have my feet out on the bottom, which is that typical for a road streamliner.
Okay, well let's go back to the Moby, and can we talk about where you raced the Moby? Were there numerous races?
Oh yeah. I raced at Northbrook. That's up near Detroit. It's Major Taylor in Indianapolis, northern Indiana, on a school area there, about 3/4 of a mile track around the school building, which I really enjoyed that one. And I raced it at Columbus, Springfield. We raced at the Springfield Park or Fairgrounds Park. It was an old runway, which I had some some bad experience there, thanks to a college rider who didn't know what the Sam hell he was doing. Shouldn't have been in a streamliner. Of course, I've been to Battle Mountain with it, and one time and set a personal speed record.
All right, Richard, let's focus in a bit on Battle Mountain. You've been there more than once, I know. Let's talk about your first trip to Battle Mountain.
Well, my first trip to Battle Mountain was with Tom. Now, you got to realize Tom doesn't always prepare very well. Like the Dodge van we were driving had a flat tire or something, and they had changed the oil in it, but the tire wasn't changed. And halfway to Indianapolis, a guy flagged us down because the tire was going flat. And we're pulling this huge, oversized trailer because we were headed to Chicago to pick up the Coslinger. And we finally got to Chicago. We were supposed to be there at 6 o'clock, and we got there at about 12:30. And they wanted us to stay and sleep. I said, no, we've got to be on the road to Battle Mountain. And we're going down there. We switch off drivers, and I'm going across, I don't know, it all looks the same out there to me. Iowa or someplace out in there, I couldn't even get that thing up to 50 miles an hour. And I pulled off, and I says, Tom, we got problems with this thing. And we analyzed it that the filter on the gas line was probably plugged up. Yeah, we pulled in there and we asked him, he says, all we need is just it fixed so we can get on our way. Well, yeah, we'll get right to you. Right to us turned out to be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We pulled into Salt Lake City, and our rider of the Coslinger was there. He'd flown in the day before, and he was about ready to rent a car to make the trip on through there. So we showed up and loaded him up and his luggage and whatever, and off we go.
Was this the very first Battle Mountain?
Very first Battle Mountain. There was actually 4 bikes included or invited there, and we were one of them. But I did not drive. I did not get to pedal that first year. And it was quite an experience. We didn't even know if our bike was going to run worth it darn there. For one thing, he had the TV camera upside down in the thing. It was a TV camera set up in the nose of it, and he was driving with a monitor sitting in front of his face.
This is something that maybe many people aren't familiar with. Why would you need a camera and a monitor in this racing recumbent streamliner? Why would you need that?
It's aerodynamics. Aerodynamics. You drive down the road, put your hand out there, and you can feel the wind pushing you back. That's the same thing. We're trying to get 80 miles an hour. And so every little imperfection in the surface, while the guys were doing whatever they were doing, partying or whatever, I was in that daggone car hauler with water and paint and sandpaper, and I was working the body down, trying to get it smoother and smoother. It's amazing what a little bit of work will do for speed there, and the bikes that are out there today are just fabulous. They're carbon fiber where we were fiberglass, and so they're lighter, they're stronger. They have huge college teams. They have huge budgets, because you bring 20 people from Europe plus a couple extra bodies plus a backup bike to start with. My God, makes us little behind the garage builders look quite primitive.
So when you say you were working the shell and everything to get it faster, you were talking about the Coslinger?
Talking about the Coslinger, yeah.
All right, so the Coslinger ran, you were part of the team that worked on that. How did that go? How did the Coslinger do with its rider that year?
I think it was in the very, very low 60s. and which we were just happy to get it up on two wheels. I was stationed in the middle of the course, which was 5 miles long, to make sure that nobody got on the course there, because it was public highway that was closed down there. The Moby, I don't remember how many years it was. It was about 3 years, I think, before I came back out there. Mm-hmm. And Gary invited me to participate in what they called the 70 or 75. It was to represent an age of several of us who were going there. Gary didn't have anything to ride, but I had the Moby to ride there. And we got out for the first day. I was ready to go. So many people at Battle Mountain, they're in the parking lot for the first 3 or 4 days finishing building their bikes. Even the big teams have problems like that. Well, Moby was a road racer. It was set and ready to go there. I got on the thing and rode through the speed traps in the low 40s, a big strong headwind, but to me I'd already done 50 because I averaged out the wind that was hitting us there. And I thought to myself, God, if I'd only trained, because this was easy, hitting almost 50 miles an hour in that thing here. And that evening we had our first 5-miler run there, where we got to really get the speed up. And I'm going down through there, trying to figure out where I am on the course, trying to figure out which gear. And as I entered the traps, I shifted down so I could spin some more. And that was not the best thing to do. I kind of put the brakes on me there. And anyway, it was too windy. It was illegal. And the next day I did not drive. The next day I got started and made a run, and it was close to 48 miles an hour, but it was an illegal run because the wind was too strong there. The wind has to be, I don't know what it is, but it's hard. You can hardly even feel the wind when it's legal. The last day, I made a couple other runs. The last day, I was running in the morning, and I made sure I was on that list because I knew it was going to be raining and high winds in the afternoon, and it was windy as could be. And I had the team assembled and everything, and we started off. Like I say, I had landing gear on this thing, so they were used to seeing me just pop it straight and just keep on going where everybody else was pushing. They're pushing off the road. They're dumping right in the start of it. There's a lot of inexperienced college kids out there who don't get enough time in a streamliner to know what they're doing. So I'm going down through there, and I can't steer. I'm pulling over towards the deck, towards the side, and I says, "What is happening here?" And I'm able to glance down on my toes, and there's light coming in. Now, the Moby has doors, Bombay doors that open up, and so I've got some maneuvering on the wheel, and then I pull the cable and shut them up. Well, I pulled the cable, but the Moby is flexible, and one of the doors went inside and locked up in there. So I pulled the right side of the road and stopped and waited on my crew, and my crew never showed up. And I says, "What the heck are they doing?" Well, after they finally showed up, Warren Beauchamp says, "Oh, Richard, you want out?" And I says, "No, I don't want out." I said, "Reach up very carefully, because there's aluminum, so you don't cut yourself, and pull that daggone door down." And which he did. And I said, "Okay, we're set to go," because there was another rider coming in about 3 minutes behind me. And I'm taking off, and I'd had the run all planned out. I knew exactly what speed I wanted to go at, where the case. Well, I didn't even know where I was on the course. To hell with the plans, just go. And I hit the go button as hard as I could, my legs, and started spinning. But in the meantime, I also had to be very careful, looking down there and closing the door very gently. Okay, that's okay. I got steering. I can go. And coming down through there, and I went through the traps. I entered the traps at 51 miles an hour, my speed, and exited at 50. Well, didn't know that my speedometer was 1.5 miles off. So it actually turned out to be 48.9 is what it was. At that presentation that night, they told me that I had set a world's record for anybody over 70. And I says, just how many people over 70 are driving streamliners anyway?
Nonetheless, that still is a remarkable achievement. So, yeah, that's amazing. So, was that your last Battle Mountain experience?
Yeah, that was the last one. I had wanted to go out again, but that's when I started getting into cancer problems and my hepatitis C treatments, which really took me down for about 6 years.
Right. And when you say took you down, it doesn't mean you stopped riding completely.
No, I didn't stop riding completely. I would go out and ride short distances and ride with the bunch, and thankfully the guys that we ride with are not snobs. If somebody's having problems, they drop back with them and help, and that's what happened with me a couple of times. They dropped back with me and accompanied me on into town there. Like I said earlier, it's disappointing because I had passed that time where my strength came back this spring, and I was doing pretty doggone good, and then this hit with my nice little tubes here running there, and after I'd ripped my esophagus, I have I choke very easy. My whole family, I lost my mother to a choke. I've got a cousin who's had the same problems that I have there. And it also boils down to male stubbornness, stupidity. Oh yeah, I can fix this. I don't need to go to the doctor. Well, the next time I get choked, which I hope is never, I'm going to go to the emergency room right then and say, clear me out. But of course, with liquid diet and baby food, I don't think I'll get choked for a while.
Tell me about your casual recreational riding. So we've talked about your racing. What about casual riding? What do you ride? Where do you ride?
Well, right now, I have about 4 different bikes that I rotate through them. 2 of them are uprights. One of them was built in Chicago for playing bicycle polo, of all things. The other one is a folding Chinese single-speed coaster brake that I bought because I intend to go camping, and it fits behind my seat on my van. Also, this year I haven't had it. I did have it out once. My velomobile, and velomobiles are a lot of fun, but they are not very social. And I'm kind of a social person there, and I like to chat with them riding there along.
Tell us about the velomobile, the non-social velomobile. What do you have?
I have a Go One. It's actually belongs to Gary Hill. I don't know if he knows where it is.
Well, he does now. And what else?
Yeah, I have 2 different trikes. I've got a very, very old one that's 09. No, it's a 20, and I bought it for my wife to gain her strength back. She had a severe heart condition and unfortunately didn't make it, but she rode the whiz wheel quite a bit. I rode the whiz wheel at Michigan 24-hour event and did 331 miles in 24 hours on it. Now, it was a little modified because I raised the cranks up higher by about 3 inches instead of being down low there, so I could scoot down in the seat and get my feet up there and really push hard there. The other one is a Catrike 700C. I've had to do some work on it to get my head in the right position so I can see. When I was 19, I had my face crushed in, and that broke my orbital floors, I just broke everything loose, crammed it in there.
What happened?
I was a passenger, and we were on a narrow road just about into Dayton. It's the only place a car could hide was where we met this fella who was in a hurry to get back to work, and he ended up on our side of the road, and our left front fenders hit, and I spun and went down and hit the dash, shoved it in, and fell down to the bottom there. And
Days before seatbelts, I assume.
days before seatbelt sign. Yep, very definitely there.
Richard, you mentioned earlier about your speed walking and how you, of all the sports that didn't appeal to you and didn't work for you in high school, you were introduced to speed walking then, and it came back later to be a bigger part of your life. Can you talk about that?
There was a gentleman called Claire Duckham, the Dayton Cycling Club founder, and he said, Richard, you should come out with Jack Blackburn and I from Springfield and try some race walking. I think you'd do good at it there, and which I did. And I started race walking because I wanted to run a marathon.
And how old were you then?
40. And I ended up using marathons as training for the race walking, because Jack was the second person in Ohio to walk 100 miles in less than 24 hours. And I asked Jack, says, what's it like? And he couldn't explain it to me, which was a trap that I'd set for myself, because anytime I would ask somebody what's it like, I had to go out and find out. And so I trained for 11 months. I would come in home after work on Friday night and grab a little bit of food, and I'd go out and walk till 6 o'clock the next morning there. Just ridiculous things there, the hours I spent walking. But I was single, and I didn't have anybody to bitch at me, so I did what I wanted to there. But I enjoyed race walking, and it really met my needs. It really something that I felt good about there, and which came into my ultra distance abilities when it comes to bike too. And I, as a vegetarian, was quite different from the rest of them too there. But
so the mental aspects of race walking translate very well into ultra racing on bikes then.
Yes, it does. You see a guy ahead of you and you want to speed up a little bit to tell him something. You watch the guy across the track coming, and you gauge yourself by where he is, and you play mental games. I would do mathematics in my head just to keep my head in the game there. Same things on the bike racing and ultra distance stuff there. I was never much of a sprinter, but I had endurance, and that's what's paid off for me.
We've discussed the fact that you have designed and built and altered some of these bikes. Tell us about the process that you go through. First of all, have you designed a bike from scratch at all?
Yeah, I would say so. My earlier ones, the full suspension bike, was designed from scratch, even though I used parts and put it together.
Tell me about what you think about when you're designing a new bike. Like, and how that works. Do you design it on paper? Do you use a computer? How is it all in your head? How does that work?
It's in my head mainly. I have a steel I-beam in the garage there that I set up for my balance or for getting things square, and then build from there. A lot of it's stock parts, some of it's custom pieces that I design and build. Where you really get into the custom stuff is when you're working with the carbon fiber. The newer bikes don't even have frames. They're monocoque design, where mine were all framed bikes there.
Is that something you enjoy doing, though?
I enjoy that very much. I really do. It takes a lot of time. You have to balance. The problem with a little guy like myself and other little guys, you have to balance training and building. If you got a big team, you can have specialists who are strictly the power plants. You specialists who strictly build the things there. When you're a little guy and you're paying for everything yourself, you can't do that. Yeah, I can't hire somebody to come in and train with me and build the pieces there.
So that's the disadvantage. I guess I'm thinking the advantage would be you get the satisfaction of knowing that you did it all yourself, yeah?
Oh, yeah. It was interesting when I brought Moby out to Battle Mountain. There was a lot of people who knew of Moby and had seen it before in its earlier racing days, and I felt good about that I had restored it, and I didn't feel good about what's happened to it. It went through a very bad crash thanks to a very unskilled rider who tried to make a right angle turn. When I swept into off the runway into a very narrow road, and there he is sideways. I drill him in the side, which knocks me down. He knocks him straight though. I go on my side. I'm sliding through dog poop. I hit a trash can, and then I hit a telephone pole, and it took the first 3 foot of my nose off. It just sheared that thing, and oh boy. But we got back in, and they got me in back to the pits, and we started with the duct tape, which is the home builder's friend, and duct taped the front end of it back together, and off I went for the rest of it. I did do a little fist shaking.
All right, Richard, we've talked about some of your health challenges, including your current health challenge. It reminds me of one of the things I know best about you, and that is your yearly adventure of riding the number of years of age that you have done for many years. Tell me when you started that, and where are you with it now?
I started when I was 60 years old. That was my first one. I went 60 miles on the rollerblades, came back and got on the bike and went 60 miles on the bike. And the next year I did the same thing. But the next year I'd gotten into recumbents, and I had a bikey, and I was going through there. So I can't tell you all the combinations. I've done it on a 3-speed. I think the hardest one I ever did it on was my kick scooter, which is a bicycle without cranks. And I enjoy scooters. That's my first transportation, was scooters there. And I started in near South Charleston, and I went to Cincinnati, and then my driver picked me up there. And August 24th, it gets hot. And in fact, the 25 years I've done this, I've never been rained on. I have had flat tires in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting on the trail trying to find where the piece of glass is to get it out of the tire. Mainly, it's been done by myself. I've had one of my lady friends used to drive me around there. 3 or 4 years ago, Tom Ollinger joined me, and for 2 years there, the last half, and I was in one of my streamliners that's easy to get in and easy to get out, and Tom thought he was going to have to push me to get me through the time there, and he says I was struggling to keep up with you, and he was on a conventional upright bike there. Unfortunately, it's going to stop this year. There's no way that I can get my condition back up. Actually, the last few years, I've been kind of looking for an excuse, a way to stop. It takes about 3 months to recover from that, even though I don't know why. I used to ride 100-milers back to back. It could have something to do with the fact I'm 85 years old.
Perhaps. And it's, the whole notion, as you get older and less able to train and carry out the miles just relentlessly continue to go up, don't they?
Yeah. And a lot of times, the last several years, I was so, well, I think when I was over 80, that I just started adding the next 20 miles on to get another century. There was times that when I was younger, that I would go out and ride 2 or 3 centuries a week. But those times have passed.
That was then, this is now,
yes.
Richard. The perverse birthday challenge, I think, is probably the best way to look at that.
Of course, I may be doing it again, but doing it in the metrics.
All right, well, let's go there, because I think I want to finish up with that. So what are your plans now? You're trying to overcome the latest health challenge, and I know you still want to get back out there. What do you think you might be capable of, and how long do you think it might take?
I would say it's probably going to take me most of a year to get my strength back there. I have my little camper, and I intend to go south to visit my daughter and ride some of the trails down there, then maybe swing west some, then come back up here when the snow is gone there, and then ride some more. Be a nomad. Well, my original plans years ago was to retire, get a camper, and we'd tour. Well, my first wife messed that up pretty good. And so I just started building this little camper 3 years ago. What else happened 3 years ago? The pandemic. That kept me sane. I had something to do, work on it there. Because during the pandemic, I was riding all the time, but I was not riding near anybody or with anybody there. I was by myself, and that gets to be lonely at times there.
What advice do you have for the young ones out there, you know, those 60-year-olds like you were 25 years ago, that may be interested in doing some of the things that you did? What advice do you have for them today?
My role model was Claire Duckham. The last time I rode with him, he was 100 years old. We all looked up to Claire and says, boy, if we could only do what you do at that age, wow. Well, I have that very same thing. Guys say, damn, if I could do what you do at your age there, I'd be in. And I says, start now. Don't wait till you're 60. That does not work. Says you have to start where you're at. Says you'll make it if you work at it over the long haul. And that's been my theory in life for a long time is accept the challenge and do what you can do, and don't complain because things don't go right. Just keep on going there.
All right, great advice. I think that is the best advice from the legend. That is Richard Myers. Richard, thank you so much for spending time with us and lending your great history and background and sharing it with the Laid Back Bike Report. Thanks, Richard.
Well, it was very much of a pleasure on my part. Thank you for coming out.